Hey, what's going on, guys? In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the South Bay's former port, Alviso. Before we get into it, I'd like to kindly ask anybody who hasn't done so already to please subscribe to the channel. We plan to continue making these videos for as long as possible, and your viewership helps us tremendously. Alright, now for the video. Located on the southernmost point of the San Francisco Bay, Alviso is situated in a historically marshland area. In 1838, when California was still a Mexican territory, Ignacio Alviso, who as a child was part of the original De Anza Party in 1775, was granted a large tract of land by Juan Bautista Alvarado, covering over 6,000 acres. The area of land was called Rincon de los Esteros, or Estuary's Corner. Shortly after, Ignacio built a port in which the town of Alviso would be built around. With California becoming part of the United States in 1850 and commerce in the South Bay growing rapidly, Alviso was on track to become an economic powerhouse due to the fact that its port was the hub for the majority of transportation between the South Bay and San Francisco. Before railroads were introduced to the Bay Area, steamships were the main mode of freight and transportation. The ship pictured here was called the Alviso and ran daily trips between San Francisco and Alviso up until the 1890s. In 1853, when Alviso was seemingly headed towards economic prosperity, a disaster occurred which marked the beginning of the end for Alviso's plans to become a hub of the Bay Area. During a routine trip between Alviso and San Francisco, the steamship Tilden-Laine exploded midway through the journey in the middle of the bay. Over 30 passengers were killed, with many others being scalded by the steam. After this event, ferries did continue to make the journey between Alviso and San Francisco regularly. However, the explosion greatly shifted public sentiment away from steamship travel towards other alternatives. And with Alviso's economy being tied to the fact that it was the South Bay's transportation hub, this marked the beginning of the end for the bright future that many had envisioned for this town. The next blow to Alviso came in 1864 when the San Francisco-San Jose Railroad opened up. As you could imagine, the railroad route between the South Bay and San Francisco was highly preferred for transportation and freight due to its convenience. However, even with the introduction of the railroad, steamships continued to depart from Alviso regularly up until the turn of the 20th century. With this being said, many agree that this marked the end of the golden era of the South Bay's port town. Fortunately, a boost arrived to Alviso's economy in 1886 when the Newark line of the Southern Pacific Railroad was built through the center of town. However, unlike the 1850s and 60s where Alviso was a hub for the entire South Bay, most of its economy would revolve around storage and manufacturing, primarily the cannery business which operated throughout the 1900s. And even though it had a strategically great location in the bay, having bay access as well as a railroad going directly through the town, it would never receive the necessary capital injection to allow it to compete with larger cities due to the fact that it sat below sea level. This photo from the 80s shows Val's restaurant completely submerged and one of the many times the town flooded. Over the years, significant attempts have been taken to control the flooding from the Guadalupe River. However, regular floodings would persist every few decades up until 1995. Because of this, the town simply never received the same funding that the rest of the prosperous Silicon Valley did. As time went on to the present day, Alviso's remained largely unchanged, except for the fact that little to nothing remains of the shipping and manufacturing industries in the town. Now, Alviso is mainly residential with a few restaurants and corporate offices on the outskirts of town. And even though this area is technically part of San Jose, the lack of development in Alviso is a huge contrast to that of the rest of the South Bay. This makes Alviso incredibly unique due to the fact that there's a very high concentration of historic buildings in such a small area. And even though industry is left, when you enter the town today, you really feel like you're taking a step back in time. Next, we're going to take a look at some of the notable historic buildings that remain here in Alviso. First off, we're going to take a look at the two oldest standing structures: California pioneer Henry Wade's house and warehouse. Both buildings are from the golden age of Alviso and actually predate the introduction of the San Jose-San Francisco Railroad. His warehouse that you see here was built in 1860. It was used to store general goods bound for San Francisco via steamship. Furthermore, it acted as a stagecoach storage for the Alviso Monterey stage line, as well as stagecoach repair station for Wells Fargo. Unfortunately, the majority of the building burned down in a fire in 2021, and since then, city officials have approved the building to be demolished. Next door is Henry Wade's original home, built in 1851. Thankfully, this building was spared from the warehouse fire, and considering it was built 1 year after California became a U.S. state, it's in excellent condition. Here you can see what it looked like before it was boarded up and the porch was dismantled. I think this photo is somewhere between the 50s and 70s. While it seems the warehouse will ultimately be dismantled, there is dialogue between the property owner and the city regarding what should be done with the home. I hope they can come to an agreement to preserve and restore this building here in Alviso or at a museum. Next, we're going to be taking a look at the Tilden-Laine home and store. Built sometime between the 1860s and 1880s, the home originally belonged to Susan Tilden, wife of a prominent merchant in Alviso. And while no longer standing, the building that you see here was built in 1865. It was originally a general store operated by the Tilden family, but changed hands over the years. It's reported that in the early 1900s, it operated as a saloon, dance hall, and even a secret Chinese lottery. However, those that are still around most fondly remember it as Laine's Grocery. I couldn't find the exact history, but at some point, the Laine family acquired both the home and the building that you see here. It operated as Laine Grocery up until at least 1960. Reportedly, the building was no longer in use after a 1980s flood, and ultimately collapsed in 2017 after a storm. The remains have since been demolished. The next buildings we're going to look at played an important part in the history of Alviso. We're going to be taking a look at the remnants of the Bayside Canning Company. The Bayside Canning Company was founded in 1890 by Cyan Chu. It was originally called the Prosperous Canning Company and was based in San Francisco. However, as a result of the 1906 earthquake, it was relocated to Alviso, reorganized, and renamed as the Bayside Canning Company. Shortly after relocating, the owner's son, Thomas Foon Chu, started working for the company. And during this era, the company experienced significant growth due to Thomas's fresh ideas. By 1930, the Bayside Company actually became the third largest cannery in the United States. Sadly, Chu passed away in 1931. But it's noted that his funeral had 25,000 attendees, which is the largest of any funeral to ever be held in the Chinatown of San Francisco. Not only will Chu be remembered for being a pillar of the Chinese community of Alviso, but also for bringing commerce to the town during a difficult point in its history. The building that you see here was originally a watch factory, but later became one of the main buildings of the cannery. Sadly, it's been left to deteriorate with no plans for restoration. This next building was originally a winery and was also repurposed to be part of the cannery. It looks to be privately owned and, compared to the other building, well maintained. This next photo from I believe the 90s shows the bunkhouse, the cannery itself, as well as the company's office on the left. Here's another shot showing the main cannery building as well as the cold storage on the left. The main cannery building can be seen here again when it was in better condition and didn't have the chain link fence up. The interior can be seen here when the roof was still in good condition and the interior looked to be intact. With this next drone shot, we're going to get a quick aerial view of the main cannery building and see how it's unfortunately just been kind of left to the elements. It's a tough situation because I know there's a lot of people out there that would like to see this restored, but this would cost a lot of money to do so. Regardless, it's cool to see that most of the buildings are still intact and haven't been demolished. While Alviso's future is unclear, I hope its charm and character persist. In nearly every corner of the town, you'll stumble upon a building that looks like it has some sort of historical significance. Don't get me wrong, The rest of the Bay Area does have its share of old buildings, but they're much more scattered around. The fact that Alviso hasn't really been developed yet is somewhat of a curse and a blessing. While its old town feel is unique, I would like to see some money get injected into Alviso to help bring awareness to its history and improve preservation. Regardless, it has a very important role in California's history and is definitely worth checking out. Thanks for watching.